Jeffrey Epstein's files has created sensational news across the US, not only US, across the world. They want a main culprits or defenders. Who are the main defenders and criminals should have to come in the justice. The survivors, the victims are expecting towards the criminal must have in the Department of Justice. But the thing is, the files have been published. Later on, remove many pictures. That's strange, appalling. One day after, they remove many pictures, justifying that the victims and survivors' integrities, their safeties, and their protections very for most important. Sure, we are supporting that. But the thing is, to justify them, shouldn't have a main culprit come out of these scandals. How is this possible? As per the Associated Press, saying that around 16 files have been disappeared from these scandals files. How's this happen? The media touch has described 468 files has been missed. Who given instructions to Deputy General to remove these files? While sensational is still it to come many face of figures to the justice, but here is nothing to happen. These files like a paper only cannot be prosecuted in the court. So entire drama and this sensational news come out to be zero conclusion. Let's play a video where many senators are expecting these files is slapped in the short-term files. There is no any such quality of evidences come out from these files.
Because in these past 48 hours, we have seen the Justice Department acknowledge it's an incomplete release, but they have put out more than 13,000 files. They say more will come. This isn't everything you asked for just yet, but would you acknowledge that they are complying with the spirit, if not the intent of your law?
No, they're flouting the spirit and the letter of the law. It's very troubling, the posture that they've taken. And I won't be satisfied until the survivors are satisfied. You know, I said in the hours leading up to this release that we will know if they are complying if they implicate any of the other criminals that are involved and the suspects that are involved, that the witnesses, the victims themselves have given to the FBI, and they've never been mentioned.
Well, there are some disclosures in here that seem new. Congressman Khanna, the documents confirm that the FBI received a complaint about Jeffrey Epstein back in 1996, but the woman whose name is Maria Farmer, who made that complaint, said federal officials failed to follow up. She said the disclosure makes her feel redeemed.
According to Thomas Massey, he just clearly said the main suspect and criminals not came out from these files. These files have nothing but shield for main criminals who stay in behind the bar. But as far as the contents of these files have nothing but empty files. Mr. Khanna has clearly said in this video, 1991 to 2000, many women came into FBI. They lodged many complaints against the culprits. Criminals should have gone through the legal process in the UOC, but they just came out from this process because Epstein was very involved with politicians, bureaucrats, and their files have extraordinary materials of crimes in these files, but nothing have received anything. As per Act of Transparency Act in these Epstein files, every data must have to be provided in transparently way and should have to shield from the victims, from the criminals, and to support their victimizations. That's the main concept of this act. But this act have just used for their own gains. This act has just beneficial for them only. Nothing. Just continue to play this video.
And that this was one of the best days of her life to see these documents made public. What action do you want taken around a case like this?
That was the single most important disclosure of what we got. I know Maria's sister. She sounded the alarm in 1996. She complained to the FBI. The problem is that Epstein was so connected with law enforcement and powerful politicians, the FBI did nothing for a decade. Frankly, she deserves compensation. She deserves an explanation. But the broader point is, Blanche was on this morning saying that Nancy and I have a problem that it's taking too long. That's not the problem. The problem is this was a slap in the face of survivors. What do they want? They want to know who are the rich and powerful men who visited Epstein's rape island and covered up the abuse. And the key documents that our law basically said needed to be released, the 60-count indictment that actually implicates a lot of these people, and the prosecution memo were not released. It's not about the timeline. It's about the selective concealment.
Well, yet, right? The Deputy Attorney General said there are more disclosures that will be made. You believe that they will not release that particular part? I mean, you did give them some leeway for redactions.
Well, first of all, the redactions were excessive, and even Harvard law professors who have looked at that have said you can't redact internal communications, you can't redact workforce product, and the courts are going to find that these were excessive. But my point, and I'm sure Congressman Massey can elaborate, is that we want the files out. So if our sounding the alarm on what is missing is going to help them get those files out, fine. But this shouldn't be a big document up. There's a pretty simple point. Who raped these young girls? Who covered it up? And why are they getting away with it?
So you're saying specific things regarding the indictment. Congressman Massey, I saw in a video that you posted, you had a very specific benchmark of success here. You said there are at least 20 men accused of sex crimes known to the FBI. How do you know that number? And do you know those names?
Yeah, the survivors' lawyers have told me those numbers, and they've described their professions in general.
And that this was one of the best days of her life to see these documents made public. What action do you want taken around a case like this?
That was the single most important disclosure of what we got. I know Maria's sister. She sounded the alarm in 1996. She complained to the FBI. The problem is that Epstein was so connected with law enforcement and powerful politicians, the FBI did nothing for a decade. Frankly, she deserves compensation. She deserves an explanation. But the broader point is, Blanche was on this morning saying that Nancy and I have a problem that it's taking too long. That's not the problem. The problem is this was a slap in the face of survivors. What do they want? They want to know who are the rich and powerful men who visited Epstein's rape island and covered up the abuse. And the key documents that our law basically said needed to be released, the 60-count indictment that actually implicates a lot of these people, and the prosecution memo were not released. It's not about the timeline. It's about the selective concealment.
Well, yet, right? The Deputy Attorney General said there are more disclosures that will be made. You believe that they will not release that particular part? I mean, you did give them some leeway for redactions.
Well, first of all, the redactions were excessive, and even Harvard law professors who have looked at that have said you can't redact internal communications, you can't redact workforce product, and the courts are going to find that these were excessive. But my point, and I'm sure Congressman Massey can elaborate, is that we want the files out. So if our sounding the alarm on what is missing is going to help them get those files out, fine. But this shouldn't be a big document up. There's a pretty simple point. Who raped these young girls? Who covered it up? And why are they getting away with it?
So you're saying specific things regarding the indictment. Congressman Massey, I saw in a video that you posted, you had a very specific benchmark of success here. You said there are at least 20 men accused of sex crimes known to the FBI. How do you know that number? And do you know those names?
Yeah, the survivors' lawyers have told me those numbers, and they've described their professions in general, but they've only given me one of those names, and I mentioned that in a congressional hearing, Jess Staley. So I searched these documents. I didn't see Jess Staley's name, nor did I see 19 other names. And here's why we shouldn't be optimistic that Blanche or Bondi are going to release these things. They sent a 6-page memo to Congress and said they cited pre-existing laws as reasons that they weren't going to follow our law. For instance, our law requires them to release information regardless of embarrassment, but they are trying to say that a previous law prevails when it doesn't. Common sense says it doesn't. The Privacy Act doesn't protect them from that. And then also, as Rose said, internal communications, they're using a FOIA standard that doesn't apply because our law already says they have to give us internal communications.
In terms of the gentleman there you referenced as accused, I mean, being in the document doesn't necessarily prove criminal behavior, right? And in terms of the redactions, what the Deputy Attorney General said is that they were abiding by your law, and also a judge in New York had ordered them to listen to victims. So they're claiming that information that they had initially even published Friday, they had to pull down because they were trying to protect victims. You don't sound convinced that they are abiding by this intent.
No, they are not abiding, and all three judges who released the grand jury material said that our law trumps the prior law. That's just common sense, Law School 101. Yet Todd Blanche is using a different theory that wouldn't survive first contact with any court, which is he's trying to say that prior laws override our law. That's not the way this works.
Okay, what are you going to do about it to force them to comply? I mean, can you do anything?
Oh, absolutely. Look, people have talked about, and by the way, Todd Blanche is the face of this, but it's really the Attorney General's office, Pam Bondi, who is responsible. And there are several ways to get at this. Some take longer, some are shorter. The quickest way, and I think most expeditious way to get justice for these victims is to bring inherent contempt against Pam Bondi. And that doesn't require going through the courts. And give her, and basically Ro Khanna and I are talking about and drafting that right now.
Okay, well, I mean, on another network this morning, Democratic Senator Tim Kaine said impeachment or contempt, it is premature, Congressman Khanna. And the Deputy Attorney General said bring it on. They don't seem to be taking this very seriously. And if you just don't have the math in the Senate, including, at least now, this Democratic senator not being convinced, doesn't that sort of show that you're at the limit of pressure?
No, we only need the House for inherent contempt, and we're building a bipartisan coalition, and it would fine Pam Bondi for every day that she's not releasing these documents. I'll tell you why. I've talked to the survivors, why this is such a slap in the face. One of the survivors said they released her name accidentally, but they still have not released the FBI file about the people who abused her at her request. And the problem here is that there are rich and powerful people. We all know this. There are 1,200 victims. They're rich and powerful people who either engaged in this abuse, covered it up, or were on this island. And what the American people want to know is, who are these people? And instead of holding them accountable, Pam Bondi is breaking the law. And this is the corrupt system, the Epstein class that people are sick of. So I believe we're going to get bipartisan support in holding her accountable, and a committee of Congress should determine whether these redactions are justified or not.
Sometime in January when you all come back, I assume that'll happen. I want to ask you, though, Congressman Khanna, there have been images released in the past 48 hours. Some of them include former President Bill Clinton. There's at least one image of Donald Trump. I should say neither man has been accused of any wrongdoing related to Epstein, though they clearly knew him. But since Friday's publication, we're showing the image here now. One of the pictures was pulled down. There were 15 images total that were then redacted from the DOJ website. And it's kind of hard to see. Major
documents that we know are out there that haven't been released. The 60-count indictment that shows massive financial fraud and foreign interference, the prosecution memo. And look, they put out these Bill Clinton pictures. Well, they're allegations that they're foreign governments that potentially were involved. And that all needs to come out. And it needs to come out in the indictments. It needs to come out in the prosecution memos. But the reality is they put out these pictures for Bill Clinton. Fine, put it all out, but don't distract from the fundamental issue, which is, who are these powerful people who visited the Rape Island? I mean, there are 1,200 victims. It defies common sense that it was just Epstein and Maxwell, and they're hiding something. And you know why the American people are so upset? My X account had MAGA supporters supporting me for the first time, saying, you know, Pam Bondi whiffed, according to Susan Wiles. She is breaking the law. She needs to be held accountable.
You're referring to the Vanity Fair quote that the chief of staff gave, saying the whiffed, and she said that Pam Bondi gave them binders full of nothingness, and then when it came to the client list, she said it was on her desk. There is no client list, quote, and it sure as hell wasn't on her desk. Do you see that as an acknowledgement here, though, that the politics have overtaken the substance?
No, for us, it's about the survivors. And if you look at Thomas Massie and my comments the morning of the release, we were giving Blanche the benefit of the doubt. We said, if it's not all there, fine, just get the information out. It's when the survivors said that this is an insult, this is a slap in their face, that we aren't getting the truth about who these men were on Rape Island, that we started sounding the alarm. And this is more documents of nothingness. And I guess the question the American people have, even to me, is the system so corrupt? Is the system so corrupt that Thomas Massie and you defy the odds, pass a bill through a discharge petition, get the Senate, get the president to sign it, and still these rich and powerful people are being protected. Who has this kind of hold on our government? What are they hiding? Why are they not releasing this?
Well, you want what? People involved in those initial investigations down in Florida re-examined and possibly prosecuted?
I want the information out, which was in that prosecution memo that Acosta disregarded, that were in those indictments, that there were 60 counts against Epstein. Only 2 counts were prosecuted. I want to know who were these other people who were on the Epstein's rape island, who were the people who saw young girls being paraded around at parties, 13, 14, 15-year-olds, and didn't say anything. And why is it so hard when there's a law requiring these names to come out? What we're seeing is survivors' names come out, but not the men who abused them. And instead of holding elites accountable, Pam Bondi is breaking the law.
Well, we will see when you gentlemen come back to work.
Let's conclude. What we have gained from these Epstein files is nothing but zero. We expected something is very sensitive materials from these files. I have many assaulting persons should be involved in this crime, but we receive nothing but deleted photos. What we gain from these files? These files cannot be prosecuted in the court. Many files have been missing from this entire context, and the Justice Department have to follow the evidences only. The evidences showing seems to be lacking in many ways, but survivors, victims expect what? They expect justice. The justice system should have be very strong and very credible manner. But in this case, since many files have been missing from the web page, therefore there are less chances to persuade legal terms whether these files have sufficient material to prove assaulting peoples like Epstein's and some Maxwell and some other powerful peoples should have not come into the justice system. I think so. I have many survivors climbing videos. They have wanted to bring them the powerful people in justice. But is it possible, or just as I watch, we can't expect in this manner? Let me finish this video.